process right now that yes, there may be life in outer space, and this presents a danger because I know and I have seen the government documents, there are plans, contingency plans in government files that at some point when they can't make the international enemy list work, as they, at one point back in the early 20th century, it was the international Jewish conspiracy. Well, that fell apart. And then it was the international communist conspiracy, and then that fell apart. And now it's the international terrorist conspiracy, and yet if you stop and think about it, how are we supposed to believe that's real when they will not do anything to secure the borders of the United States? So that's a sham too. And when that begins to fall apart, then according to authoritarian sources, the next thing is going to be a threat from outer space, just like Ronald Reagan warned us about in his speech to the United Nations. So if you don't want to be panicked and stampeded by this phony threat from space, then you'll study the UFO issue and you'll find out the truth about the issue. And then when they say, oh no, there really are aliens and they're coming to eat you and you have to give up all the rest of your liberty so we can protect you, you can say, nah, I don't think so.
Right, absolutely. But so, I mean, through remote viewing, you became a remote viewer yourself, is that right?
I have, in my study of remote viewing, I did participate in some remote viewing studies and in some testing, and interestingly enough, I tested pretty well.
I'm not surprised, because you've got a great sort of objectivity about the way you look at different topics, and from what I understand, I've studied remote viewing a little myself, and I understand that, it really takes sort of an impartial look at what's in, on the other side, so to speak.
I was kind of surprised to find out that I tested so well in remote viewing, but then as I thought about it, it really wasn't that surprising because as a journalist and a newspaper man, I had long since learned to somewhat trust my intuition. And my intuition rarely let me down, and that's, of course, that's getting to the soft psychic signal that's at the heart of the remote viewing experience.
Absolutely. So where are you with that as far as using that in what you're going down this road, you're sort of investigating the Nazi connection behind our government and what's going on now in America. And so how does the remote viewing sort of help you in that sort of journey?
Well, it's actually not much at all, which is surprising and probably pretty stupid. But it's like, I know I should exercise a whole lot more than I do, but I just don't because I'm too busy doing other things, and it's the same thing with remote viewing. I really probably should sit down at least once a day and try to keep my remote viewing skills up to, razor edge, but I don't.
But you are using your intuition, right?
Right.
In your investigation.
And it's helped me learn to even give more trust to my intuition.
Right. So where are we going as a country right now, and why?
The United States has always been, at least been attempted to be dominated by a wealthy elite, and that goes all the way back. Alexander Hamilton and his rich friends, they wanted to run the country because they felt like that the rich people knew how to handle things and somehow had better sense than everybody else. So that's nothing new, and as a result, the United States has always had a somewhat conservative bend to it, and that's okay too, because especially when you have a great country with full of resources and everybody's prospering, and you want to, let's conserve everything we have, so there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But unfortunately, with the influx of National Socialist, which in the German language the acronym of which is Nazi, with the influx of Nazis after World War II being aided and abetted and funded by Wall Street financiers and people who consider themselves globalists. They have no particular interest in the United States per se. They want to try to run the world. The first into the military-industrial complex, and then into the defense industries, and then into academia, and then into other professions. This National Socialism has been worming its way into the United States since after World War II. And it really came to fore when George Herbert Walker Bush became president, whose grandfather was actually prosecuted by the federal government of the United States in late 1942 for being a financial frontman for Hitler and the Nazis, and then his son George W. And during the 8 years of the George W. administration, we saw the rise in the dominance of neocons or neoconservatives, which is nothing less than just another name for National Socialism. So we saw this whole country tend towards the right, towards towards fascism, and because fascism is defined as the blending of state and corporate power, and I don't think there's anyone who can argue that that's not the case in the United States today. The big difference is in Nazi Germany, the state gained control over the corporations, and it was that combination that created that fascist state. And in modern America, we have the corporations gaining control over the state through lobbyists and through PACs and through the groups that they now control the government. But the end result's the same, a blending of corporate and state power, which is fascism. Now, after 8 years of this fascism, people were beginning to chafe, and even the people who thought they really wanted to support George W. Bush because he said all the right things began to realize that all he was doing was pushing socialist programs and waging unprovoked wars of aggression. So there was a backlash, and so now we have shifted from National Socialism to Marxist socialism under Barack Obama. But nothing really has changed, because in the Bush W. administration, all the top important people were members of the secretive Council on Foreign Relations, which has dominated U.S. foreign policy since before World War II, and was created for the express purpose of bringing in a world government. And under the Barack Obama administration, we find that all of his top cabinet members, they're all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. So the very same secretive, wealthy elite is still running this country, only now under the guise of Marxist socialism. And after 4 years of Marxist socialism and the attendant collapse, probably, of the U.S. economy, then we're going to be all set up to really go for a new dictator, a new Führer, as people in their panic over the economy and over the social programs, they'll swing back and vote for some dictator. And this is the same methodology that was used in pre-war Germany by the same people.
Okay, well, enter free energy into that scenario, and what do you get? Because we do see the destruction of the American economy. We see the world economy going down, as a matter of fact. But where does free energy kind of fit into this puzzle, if you will? And certainly it's in black projects, as we know, and we've documented in various videos with various people. And I know you're involved in, working with Gordon Neville and the RAM project on some level, although I'm not sure how. So maybe you could, so that puts you in a really interesting position to view how free energy is coming into this puzzle.
Right. Well, there are several question marks in the whole equation, and free energy obviously is one of them. If we could break the stranglehold of the monopoly of petrochemicals and come up with some sort of a free energy, the whole equation would change. And this is what's going on right now. There are some very, very intense, interdicting, and covert conflicts going on over which technology that we want to go to, who's going to control it. And for example, we hear talk of fuel cells for vehicles. The reason we don't have it yet is because they hadn't figured out how to get a monopoly over it. And so this, again, is going to depend on how the future paradigm begins to shape up. I would like to see some sort of economy set up that's not monopoly-based, that everyone has a little bit of everything. In fact, to give you an example, to me, the biggest example and proof of conspiracy in the world today is the fact that even while people are sitting here watching this interview, in the back of their mind, they realize that somewhere there are literally thousands, if not millions, of children starving to death. Now, is it
Absolutely.
because the earth cannot produce enough food to feed those children? No, of course not. We have the technology that we could feed and clothe and house and give reasonable, minimal health care to every single person on this planet.